Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and last night we ended up getting the version 6.1 patch of Gems of War. In this video, we're just going to be briefly going over some of the more important changes, while there are a few minor things like Death Knight armor now being $20, and a few other like tweaks here and there, like another use of Shrine. The main core of the patch was related to the Soulforge, a much needed update. Some of it was good, some of it is very strange. But we'll be going over a good majority of it. Patch notes will also be in the description below if you want to go see the full thing. So, as far as the main differences, we ended up getting a brand new gnome that brings in a brand new currency that is used to upgrade the brand new Soulforge. So this is the guy that you want to look for. He is found in, I believe, PvP and Explore. You mostly just want to spam Explore, obviously, as it will have the best chance of finding him. This is just Explore 1 with a Ironhawk team where you could use Rowan Quick Kill or any other team you wish to kill quickly with. But basically, this guy exists. He has a new gem type, Curse Gems. He's basically just count as brown and will curse the enemy, as you would kind of expect from it. But basically, when you kill this guy, he's a very rare drop, which is why we're starting in a battle, because trying to find this thing, gosh, takes absolutely forever. But whenever you kill him, you will notice he has a new currency on him. So if we go and kill him right here, you will notice that we get around, I believe it's about 10 to 15 or so. If you end up doing Durnum Plus, that's closer to like 1 or 3, because of course it gets reduced. However, if you end up doing it normally, it should be around 10 to 15. Not sure the exact range, but seems very close to that. It's got 11 the previous time, and this one is a 12. So as you can see, this is a new resource called Cursed Runes, and this is probably the main thing that's relevant in this patch. So Cursed Runes are used for quite a few things. If we go head over to Soulforge right now, we can see almost the entirety of the patch. If we go over to games, over to Soulforge, we now have some new features. You might notice on the first 10, we actually already have some new things. There are one-off rewards every single time you go up a tier now, which will just give you something that you can craft for pretty much free. Technically, it has like a little bit of a soul cost or something else, but for the most part, they're basically free with how cheap they are once you end up reaching the level. So you get a bunch of those you can craft like one time, so like some Imperial Deeds and other various loot. But now the Soulforge goes up to level 20. Levels 11 to 20 now require that material that we just ended up getting, those Cursed Runes. You can also end up doing it with gems. If you do it with gems, it'll cost around 6,000 gems if you go the entire way with it, though you can also just do it with those Cursed Runes that we just ended up getting as a drop right there, as you saw. So if you have about over 20,000 gems or so, I would say it's probably better just to buy it up. Otherwise, if you're like 10,000 or lower, or kind of in that in-between spot, you might just want to go and farm them in order to get it up, as there's not anything too big of a rush that you really need to rush down that the Soulforge ended up adding. However, there are a bunch of new craftable resources, and in this video, I mostly just kind of want to go over them. So let's just start it based on every single tier. So let's go over some of the unique stuff first. Some of the things that you can actually end up getting that are completely unique only to these shards, and you cannot obtain through any other means. The very first one is the Mythic, which we have right down here, the Darksmith Drinza. This is needs the weapon, which you end up getting basically for free off of the 19th tier. It also requires the resources of a 40 Celestials, which you might notice there are a lot of new Celestial sinks. There's nothing for Arcanes, but definitely a really sizable amount of Celestials. If you're earlier on in the game and don't have too many Celestials, a lot of these newer features might be a little bit hard to access, just because of the sheer amount of Celestials. Obviously, a lot of people later in the game have more than they could ever know what to do with, but this might actually bottleneck you more than the runes from time to time. But basically, luckily this doesn't cost any kind of gems or anything. It's just like a bunch of souls, and most notably probably the Celestials and the runes themselves. But as far as the Mythic, it's kind of average. Just ends up giving an armor buff to your entire team and does some damage to an enemy boosted by cursed gems. This is okay because it does have a bit of a decent boost ratio. However, the fact that it only hits one target probably won't make this too viable. You might as well just use a guard's avatar. Theoretically, I guess you could use it with a guard's avatar, but this doesn't really do enough. It also gets to destroy all the cursed gems, which means if there's at least 4 of them on the board, you're probably just going to curse the entire enemy team, which does synergize with his final trait, which converts 2 brown gems to curse, and then you can end up just destroying them then with this ability. So it has some synergy there. Almost reminds me of that one brown Mythic that curses every single time you take a brown, except this one basically does it every single time it casts, while converting the brown gems into something. The only big issue with this, though, is given that it is a curse like this, you can be cursed inversely. So similar to that one fire one that we had that can burn the entire enemy team, well, the enemy team can also end up burning you off of it. And the same kind of situation ends up happening here. While yes, you can end up getting a curse onto the opposing team, they can also take it and curse you back. So overall, nothing really too special for a Mythic. Actually surprised it's a 24 mana cost as well. So not too high of a priority to get, but still nonetheless is a Mythic, and specifically a Mythic from KZL, if you were needing another one from the location. As far as weapons, we do now have 6 more weapons, which are all seemingly Doom weapons, which means they're going to require those Doom resources, which are so absurdly annoying to get, and while this patch did make it slightly easier to get them, they are still insanely annoying. But these weapons seem kind of okay. They seem like slightly better as far as some of the Doom weapons, but they're not as good as like the full AoE Doom Skull weapons. And as far as like Guild War usability, they're not going to be as good as the books. I would say they're probably maybe third priority, but even those hammers that we had almost seem slightly better. Like if you compare this one, which is almost like the hammer effect, compared to the other Doom hammers, it just doesn't seem that worth it. It does have, they do have like this bless kind of mechanic going for them that can end up kind of working out, but I don't really feel like that's going to be good enough to justify using them compared to some of the other Doom weapons, especially with how hard it is to not only just initially obtain them, but also to get all the scrolls that you need to still end up upgrading them. But some of the most interesting things is not all of that, but more so everything that we can end up getting through here. So as far as unique things that you can only get, there's only one, and that is the Angry Anvil, which I actually have equipped right now. This is just a cosmetic pet, nothing special. You just get this pet, you just have it, and you just equip it as you would any pet. Obviously, you can upgrade it, all that normal things that you would do with a pet, and it just counts as a Broken Spire. So if you need another like max Broken Spire pet, you could technically start working up to max. So we'll take quite a few obtaining of them to end up reaching that point. But that's the only unique thing here. Everything else, though, is a weird combination of loot. And let's kind of start from the top and go over if they are pretty much worth it or not worth it. So the first things that we have that are new are the Forge Scrolls. This is something we've been needing into the game for quite some time. The only slight issue with them is their writ cost. They do cost 100 writs each. This basically means writs are no longer used for Imperials. They are used entirely for Forge Scrolls. So if you happen to be saving these from the past, this is pretty good. And if you haven't been converting them to Imperials, because now they are super important to convert into all of these Forge Scrolls, as these things are insanely annoying to get. If I'm not mistaken, their value comes out to around around 133 gems or so each whenever you end up getting them through the actual event itself. So this basically makes the value of these things, especially for if you're actually upgrading it, somewhere around like 20 to 30-ish gems each as far as these little red crystals are concerned. So theoretically, not even counting the writs, you're already end up spending like around 100 to 150 worth of these things, plus a little bit of celestials, the writs that you end up needing, and then a little bit of souls. But the main thing that this is going to be is basically every 10 that you end up crafting as well will end up consuming basically 1 Imperial, not in the sense that you're literally costing 1 Imperial, but 1,000 writs is an Imperial, so that's now going to these Forge Scrolls instead of what it would have been prior, which is Imperials, basically meaning there's now less Imperials in the game, but there are now more Forge Scrolls in theory, unless you still want to use them on Imperials. However, I would say Forge Scrolls, due to the sheer amount that are needed in the current state of the game, are a bit better, even though Imperials are still a really good resource to have. Overall, these aren't bad value, though I would mostly only use it if you're in a pinch to get like the last few. I would not necessarily advise doing it if you need like 20, 30, 40, 50, even more than that. Like if you're trying to buy all these just to max out a weapon, seems a little steep for how many resources you end up needing, but if you're like a few short, it's definitely worth closing the gap, that is for sure. Next, we have probably the worst thing you could ever try using any of these resources on, and that is the Guildmate gift. One nice thing about this is this is the first time this is accessible to free to play. The bad thing about it, though, is it requires so many resources that no one in their right mind will ever do this. I think the main reason why they made this so expensive is to make sure that people wouldn't like make some kind of like small account and then like a grind to a certain point and then like have them send all of the Guildmate gifts from that account over to a different account so they could like convert their gems over to a different account or some kind of like weird strategy like that. However, in them making it so impossible to do that, it is basically pointless to ever bother going for this. This just gives 25 gems to a guild mate, and even just the fact that it costs 50 gems already makes it not worth it. The fact that it requires even more than one of these things makes it not worth it. I think you need like level 19, or where is it? Guildmate gift, Guildmate gifts. It requires 15? Where is it? It's somewhere in here. Guildmate gift, you need 12, so that's actually not too high. I'm actually surprised they didn't make that higher if they're trying to deter people from like doing it on new accounts. But it's just so expensive. I would highly advise never crafting this thing. Even though this is the first instance where it's available free to play, to obtain these things, it is just way too overpriced to bother engaging with. Anyways, next up we have an interesting one that is both good and bad, which also makes me wonder why on earth have they not added this for the Underworld treasures. This would be a great feature to have for the Underworld treasures, though it was not added this patch, oddly enough, not sure why. But anyways, we can now upgrade medals, which is a really nice addition. Unfortunately, though, for most people, this isn't quite worth it. For this tier of things to really be worth doing, you have to be extremely late in the game and probably doing at least a couple hours of Explore 12 every single day. The main reason I say this is realistically due to the fact that you're using about 166% value to get a 100% value item. Essentially, you would have to have all of the rarity plus the bronze of the next rarity in order for these to be viable. So what I mean by that is, for example, for the lowest rarity one of this rare metal to be worth it, you'd basically have to have every common in the entire game gold medaled while also having every single rare bronze medaled. The reason for this is you would eventually reach a point where bronze medals can no longer be used while still having a 100% chance to get an upgrade. And once you have gotten past that point, which would be all commons maxed and then all bronze levels for all rares, you can no longer end up using 3 of them in order to have a 100% roll for a upgrade. So instead, you can now upgrade the actual medals themselves into a bigger medal, which would then allow you to do so. And in that case, you would have to have, to be able to use the ultra rares, you basically would have to have every common gold medaled, every rare gold medaled, and then have all the ultra rares to their first level before this is viable, and so on and so forth. You'd have to have every common, rare, and ultra rare to gold, and then all epics to bronze. So obviously this applies to very few people in the game. There are some people that deep in the game, and this will be very useful for them, of course. However, a good majority of people, including myself, despite how much we play, are not at that point or even remotely close. So this will be a nice feature into the future. However, I don't think it's that applicable to most people, and if you're at the point where you don't have all those things maxed, it's just you're losing too much value to really bother interacting with these. So this is a great feature nonetheless. However, I'm pretty sure most people won't be engaging with it. So for the most part, I would say these are bad value, not in that they're actually bad value, but because most people aren't at the point where they can really fully utilize their value. Anyways, next up we have Orb of Clans and Major Orb of Clans. These are both okay to craft. Basically, this converts your gold keys into a resource that can be used to get mythics. So gold keys normally, of course, or always for that matter, have a 0% chance of giving you a mythic. However, that's not the case anymore, technically. You can now convert them to Orb of Clans, and of course Orb of Clans, when you have 40,000 seals in your guild, are basically like gem keys. And this will end up giving you... gosh, I forgot how many, 15? Yeah, because it's 300. So this is basically the equivalent of 15 gem keys. So now you could take all those resources, like 500 gold keys and everything else there, and convert it into what is essentially 15 gem keys, or 7.5 if you haven't done the other, or, you know, if you haven't maxed out all those guardian troops yet. But for the most part, that's pretty okay value. If you find you're already used most of the stuff that you need these runes for, and you have spares, these are definitely worth considering, and use them to try to get things like new mythics when they come out every single month, and mostly just that. Like, this is a pretty good way to stock up if you're lower on those materials. The bigger one also does a very similar thing in that you use glory keys in order to convert them basically into even more glory keys, or in this case more so like gem keys in a sense, because this bigger one is 1,700 or 1,500, which comes out to 75 gem keys, if I'm not mistaken. So that's pretty good value. This isn't, I would actually say this one's almost worse value than the other one, which might seem a little bit weird. But the main reason for that is glory keys already have a chance of giving you a mythic, whereas gold keys have a 0% chance of giving you a mythic. So if your main goal is like converting your resources up to something that will actually end up netting you a mythic, it's actually better value to do Orb of Clans, the smaller one, which might seem a little bit counterproductive, but is pretty much the case. The other thing that makes it that way is the amount of Celestials. It needs a lot more Celestials than the bigger one, whereas the smaller one uses a much smaller amount of Celestials. So oddly enough, Orb of Clans is actually better than the other one. However, both of them are situationally worthwhile. One thing that is not that worthwhile, though, is the smaller Orb of Chaos. Just not really worth it. Obviously, it doesn't have any chance for the power orb, and overall, you could maybe do it if you were just like really in a pinch for a single orb, but relative to how many resources you end up needing, you're probably just better off, especially the chance of rolling badly, you're probably just better off converting your gold keys into a guarantee at least okay orb, rather than going Orb of Clans, getting RNG'd into like a green, a small green. So you're better off just taking the guaranteed value if you're going to bother engaging with the smaller one there. As far as the next one, just the Angry Anvil, this is, you know, cosmetic pet. It's mostly just for completionist sake, or if you really wanted to go get a Broken Spire max pet, though with how many copies you would end up needing, probably not that worth it. Next up we have ourselves one of the, oh wait, where's the major one? Wasn't there a major Orb of Chaos? Could have sworn there was. Maybe I'm going crazy. Could have sworn there is. Oh, I just don't have the resources for it. I was gonna say, I wanted to do that one next. So we just went over the smaller one. The major one, however, is a little bit better. While it is still RNG based. Of course, Major Blue, as well as that 1% chance for power, might make it somewhat more worth it. There also aren't as many ways to get the major ones compared to smaller ones, other than like mass farming vault events, you know, just getting them slowly over time through your guild, and bounty hunters can get you some in a pinch. But this is still a pretty good way to end up getting them if you feel like you still need a few more. Again, one of those other ones where you mostly just do it if you're really in need of a few more, and you just really want those blues to end up getting a Zugoff or something similar. But for the most part, you might want to stay away from it just because the RNG factor related to it. And lastly, we have vault keys, which makes absolutely no sense for how much they cost. They require 100 maps and 10 of these stones, which the main thing being annoying being 10 of those stones. So there's so many other things to be using stones on that this is probably one of the lower priorities. Not as low as the gift, but definitely pretty low, especially with how common you're going to be getting things like vault keys these days. It's a vault event still today and tomorrow if you're watching this as of the time of the patch and everything. There's still a vault event going on. There's going to be another one happening Christmas weekend. And there's just so many vault keys in the game right now that just getting a few more seems like basically zero, even though their value hasn't changed. The quantity that you can obtain through various means has, which makes every single time where you can only get a few, similar to this, just seeming really bad value, especially given that it needs 10. If it was only like a few, it might be okay. But the sheer amount of treasure maps, even though most people have more than they could ever know what to do with, this would burn through them pretty quick. And the fact that you need so many stones, you can't even just like dump them all. So I don't know, it's just a weird combination that doesn't really work out. So as far as the final verdict, if you're looking for just the definitive best things to end up getting with your runes, I would say just prioritize all the unique things. So the unique things include the Mythic, which I think I might end up getting first, even though I got the pet first, but after the one copy of the pet. The weapons, the 6 weapons, and also the Anvil pets. Those are probably the ones I would prioritize the most, as they actually give you newer content. If you're looking to use them on a resource, I would probably say one of the best overall values, if you're just looking to convert something, is probably the Orb of Clans. Mostly because a lot of people have quite a few spare gold keys laying around, and this is the first instance we've ever really had, other than hoping you land on like gem keys and glory from using gold keys. This is pretty much the first time we've directly had a way to convert gold keys into something that has a mythic chance. So that's kind of interesting and not something we've really had prior to this patch. So that's a pretty good feature. The next biggest thing to probably consider end up getting are the Forge Scrolls. While the fact that they're a little bit locked is a little bit annoying, it doesn't change the fact that these things are still like near impossible to get. So being able to get more of them is still a beneficial thing, even if it is super annoying to do so. Which another thing I wish was a slightly cheaper on the amount of runes that they end up giving. And aside from that, I'd probably say that the next best is probably... Gosh, there's so many that just aren't worth it. I'd probably say is the category of upgrading these, particularly just the lowest one. While not everyone is quite there yet, there are some amount of people that are definitely like maxed all commons. And if you are at that point doing the common to rare, you can actually finally get some values from those medals instead of just having to gamble them. Because if you're someone who doesn't want to deal with any kind of amount of RNG factors within the game, particularly when it comes to medaling, you would want to, once you start using your guard medals for something like ultra rares, instead of actually using your guard medals for ultra rares, which would guarantee give you a not 100% chance, I think it's like 33% chance if you use 3 for the first level or something like that. But you wouldn't be able to have any amount of 100% chance. However, if you end up converting them, those smaller ones, into a bigger one, and go from there after you've already maxed out all the commons, then that could end up being kind of okay value. Very, very rarely applicable to most, and you're already losing so much metal value, but it at least guarantees you that better rarity rate. So there are situations where these might be worth it. Like even though it would almost seem kind of bad at some situations too, even if you just like really wanted to upgrade another mythic and you just didn't have the, like you had the Anus, but you just didn't have that last Nisha, but how long it's going to take you to farm a full Nisha medal, there might be some situations where you're like, okay, I'll go sacrifice like 2 Anus and a value in order to go and have a guaranteed Nisha just to have a 100% chance of getting the mythic I want upgraded. Like there are a few situations where these aren't that bad. Plus, this is probably one of the only few things where I feel like the shard rate is actually, like the rune rate for them, is actually not overpriced. A lot of these I feel like require way too many runes for what you get in return, whereas every single one of these is like actually priced correctly. Like I wish the rest of the Soulforge that we ended up getting with this patch was similar to how these are. But yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised that one of the weirdest things that is actually probably the best value is just an Orb of Clans. It might seem weird, but being able to convert gold keys into a mythic obtaining resource is pretty solid. But anyways, guys, if you still have any other questions, that's pretty much wrap it up for now. So feel free to leave it in the comment section below. We did do a full-blown stream last night, kind of messing around with everything as well. And we'll be doing it again tonight and tomorrow night and a lot more soon. One other thing that's pretty noteworthy to mention is that one really rare gnome that does end up giving these. It is so hard to find right now. However, supposedly this Thursday and for a week after that, they're going to be increasing the rate of actually being able to find these things. So it is worth considering farming during that time, because for that week it will have an increased rate. What exactly this increased rate will end up being overall, we don't really know at this current moment in time. However, we'll find out tomorrow or whenever they propagates. I think it said tomorrow on the forum. However, this is a weird day to do it, Thursday in the middle of the week. Though, hey, we have a weird vault event right now. But tomorrow should be a really good day for that then, Thursday. Mostly because it should coincide both a vault event and the buffed rate for these new runes. So these cursed runes. So it has a lot of potential to end up farming up a lot of loot. But anyways, guys, that'll wrap it up for now. Sorry if it's a little bit rambly. It's kind of early in the morning and still haven't gotten much sleep yet. But any other questions, feel free to leave it below. We'll be covering this a ton more into the future and probably just doing a bunch of grind streams, as there's definitely a lot more to end up grinding out now. That is for sure. Always like patches where we do have something that we can instantly grind. And it's been a pretty fun experience, especially since this entire patch has coincided with a vault event simultaneously, which just means even more loot while we do it. So makes it feel a little bit more rewarding, since we could go like an hour and still not find it, but still get, you know, a whole hour's worth of vault event loot. So kind of still worth it. Anyways, guys, I'll catch you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. As always, feel free to leave a like on the video. Helps out a lot and is greatly appreciated. And I'll catch you guys soon. Goodbye, everyone.